Hey, folks, just a friendly reminder that all shows on the Madness Comic Network are produced by their individual hosts and in no way reflect the opinions of the network as a whole.
Hey everyone, I'm Laurie Calcaterra, and if you're not watching the Madness Comic Network, there could be
consequences.
Guess who's back? Back again. Shady's back. Tell a friend. Guess who's back? 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 Guess who's back?
Who am I, you ask? I was created in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by the waste of a dying world. I was bestowed with an insurmountable task: bring peace after decades of death, persecution, and chaos. I am a grandchild of war, destined to help two camps which hate has fueled for far too long. Surprisingly, I am not alone. Have an odd bunch to make the road a little more bearable. Come with me to bring hope where there was despair, respect where there was resentment, creativity where there was destruction. I am Pinocchio, and this is my story.
Hi, I'm Kurtz and you're watching the Madness Comic Network.
The Madness Comic Network and comic-related madness proudly presents Madness Tuesday Morning Brew. Tune in to our content on Comic Talk with Pops Van Zandt on YouTube.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Yes, don't adjust your TV screens. It is the Tuesday Morning Brew, and I am not Laurie Calcaterra. I am filling in for her today. I am so honored to be able to do that. I am NeM. You have seen me as a guest on this show before, but in case you don't know me, I am a writer. I am a writer of novels. I'm a writer of comic books, to include an upcoming project that I'm working on, which is Blood World. Phoenix Throne, but I will get to that in a moment. But it is 8 o'clock here in the morning on the West Coast. Yes, I'm coming to you from the West Coast, and I have my Tuesday morning brew, and I'm drinking, and I am very happy to be here on the Madness Comic Network to talk to a very special guest that I've got coming up pretty soon, and we'll bring him in here in just a moment. But before I get to that, I have been given some time to talk to you about my latest project, which is Phoenix Throne, which is in my Blood World universe. It is a science fiction universe, and we're getting ready to launch a Kickstarter campaign soon on Kickstarter. There's the link right there. Thank you so much, Pops. So go there. You could just, type in Phoenix Throne in the search as well if you don't want to try and type in and fat finger that whole link in there. But that will take you to our campaign pre-launch page where you can say, ask to be notified on launch. But to give you a little idea of what we're doing in Phoenix Throne, just real quick, because I want to get to our guest. I'm really excited to talk about what he's got going on. But it's set in the 26th century, and this whole universe is about what the future of humanity is going to be. And we're starting off by looking at something called the Ganymede Monarchy, and they are fighting. They're in the middle of an insurrection, a civil war. There are people who are trying to upend Queen Isabet Arneth, who is the current ruler of these group of people whose monarchy is centered around the planet Jupiter, and they're trying to overthrow her. And there's a number of reasons there's going on that they are trying to do that. But in short, we've got a lot of things going on. We've got violence. If you want that, check. We've got subterfuge, check. We got espionage, check. We got lies, check. We've got interfamily squabble. We got that going on. We got a little bit of politics going on. Not that kind of politics, comic politics. So don't worry, we're not getting into that. And we've also got even a little bit of sexual seduction. But I promise you, folks, it's PG-13, so you don't have to worry about that. And if you wanted something more risque, well, unfortunately, we don't have that for you right now. But if you ask enough, maybe we could provide that as well. But all of that is going on, and we put all that into the mixer. And what comes out on the other side is Phoenix Throne, where we're going to take a look at these people and introduce you to the wider Blood World universe, where there are any number of factions vying for control of what the future of humanity is going to look like and what that all entails. And you'll be introduced to what's going on Earth still, what's going on in the wider solar system, and what is going on in the primary enemies of the Ganymede Monarchy, which is the Seoul Scientific Symposium. And they are bad guys like you have never seen before, all about genetic engineering and manipulating the genome to do a whole host of things. So yes, there is the pre-launch page. You've got some images from the comic there to give you a little bit of the flavor of what Phoenix Throne is like. And go check that out, please. Please go sign up to be notified for when we launch, which is going to be on Monday. I'm going to be doing a stream on another channel, including my own private channel, to launch it. But we're going to be going live. We got a whole host of things coming up. We've got some ash cans available to include space monkeys. I know people have been clamoring out there for space monkeys. We're going to be doing space monkey stickers. We're going to be doing space monkey color forms. We're going to offer a one-of-one tier where you can buy a full-size mech helmet from the battle mechs that are in here, and we will customize it, putting your name and whatever badge and logo you want for the salt company that you'll be part of. We will paint that on the helmet for you. It'll be 3D printed. We will ship it out to you. You'll be the only one that will have one of those. We're going to be doing some action figures as well as if we reach our funding goal, we're going to be doing some action figures as well. We may even do some statues. We got a whole host of stuff in the background that is planned that I don't want to reveal yet. And we will talk about that on the launch on Monday. But please go sign up for the pre-launch. It would help us so much to get out there and get visible and be ready for Monday when we launch this campaign. So enough about Blood World, though. I am here to fill in for Laurie Calcaterra. I also have to say, make sure you go check out Path of the Pale Rider. She just finished her latest campaign, successful again. She is just a machine with this stuff. I have signed up for it, and I'm looking forward to getting that and my hot sauce. I am looking forward to getting a little bit of Path of the Pale Rider hot sauce. But if you didn't get that and you want to get the stuff that's already available, make sure you go to the Any One World, where she has all of her books available over there as well. So you can still order past stuff. So go check that out, because Laurie's books are amazing. So you owe it to yourself to go over there, check out Path the Pale Rider, and then stay tuned. I'm sure she's got another Kickstarter right around the corner. Even though she gets stressed during them, she is so successful at them, and I know she's going to be successful at the next one she does as well. So make sure you're watching for that. Go support Path the Pale Rider if you haven't done it already, and wait in anticipation if you've backed this latest Kickstarter, because she will be getting that out to you soon. So enough with all that. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of Tuesday Morning Brew. I'm talking about our guest. Now, our next guest is about to come on. I did a little bit of research before this. I'm hosting the show for Laurie, and I wanted to know exactly what's going on. So I went and I looked up Chris. Our guest is Chris Sahloff. And I looked up his homepage, and I looked at what he's doing. And, man, just looking at it got me excited. So before I give it all away, though, because I want him to talk about it, let's bring on our guest right now, Chris Sahloff of Homebrewed Heroes and his comic Crit. How you doing, Chris?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great, especially for 8 a.m. Whatever my wife put in this brew this morning, she has got me going. So
nice. Yeah, I'm on my second energy drink of the day. I'm a Ghost fan. I need to get a sponsorship because I drink like 4 of these a day. Probably not good for my heart, but whatever. No big deal.
Laurie is taking a much-needed vacation, from what I understand. I think she's in parts unknown. I don't know. Maybe she's writing Big James. I don't know what she's doing, but she is out there taking a little bit of a break, and I think she's earned that break. I think we can all agree with that. She is one of the hardest-working women in indie comics. So I was very honored that she asked me to fill in for her, and when she said, "Hey, Nim, can you fill in for me on my show?" I was like, "Of course." So. Yeah, I did that. So, Chris, tell me a little bit about. I was looking at your webpage, and you said that you wanted to play D&D, but you didn't want to play fantasy D&D. You want to play D&D with superheroes. So, tell me about how that came about, and then a little bit about how that turned into a comic, because I think that's fascinating. What is Ghost Energy Drink?
It's a brand called Ghost. I know they started out as like a pre-workout company. The guy that owned it was from Connecticut, where I'm from, so I got into it real quick. But now I think their headquarters is in Ohio. But it's like any other energy drink, except they don't use a lot of the garbage that's in other stuff. So I don't feel really bad after drinking it. But as far as superhero D&D, so I have to rewind back to about 2010 when my friends and I used to play. If you're familiar with the system, we used D20 Future because none of us really enjoyed like fantasy settings as much, because we kind of play a lot of D&D, and fantasy settings get redundant with cleric and all that stuff. So we played a modified version of Future. So we played a Mass Effect campaign, for anybody that's familiar with that video game.
Love Mass Effect. Very cool.
So we homebrewed an entire Mass Effect campaign, and they actually did this to get me to play, because I was new to I was in Boone, North Carolina. I was new. Work had just moved me up there, and none of the guys, I didn't know anybody when I got there. So one of the things they said was like, "Oh, just come play D&D with us." And I was like, "I'm a nerd, but I'm not that big of a nerd, And they finally convinced me by saying, "Oh, we homebrewed this Mass Effect campaign. You can play a Mass Effect character." I'm like, "All right, cool. Sci-fi, I'm sold. Pizza and D&D it is." So we played every Sunday night for about 2 years, a little bit more. It was just a normal thing. Sunday rolled around. We went, got pizza, went to, whoever was hosting, we went to their house, and we played D&D all night. And then we, after 2012, I moved, a few other guys moved. We started families, some of us stayed in touch, some of us didn't. And we'd always talked about doing superhero D&D. In fact, we tried a couple times, but it's just very hard to balance because when you think superheroes, you think Superman, you think these epic level heroes. And funny enough, I was playing Spider-Man on PS4, and you start off as like, a basic Spider-Man. Yes, he's a superhero, but he doesn't have all his bells and whistles yet. And you kind of level him up through the game until you get the cool suits and the different, abilities and all that stuff. And I don't know what clicked, but I was like, hey, this is like D&D where you can kind of customize the hero how you want as you level up. Like my Spider-Man is probably different than someone else's. And so I just took that idea and I called all my friends and I said, hey, I have this idea to play D&D with superheroes. We start off level 1. It'll be a normal, like a modern world. And what makes you guys super is that you're the only people with these abilities, or that of. So realistically, in a D&D world, a rogue isn't a superhero unless he's not like, there's nothing special about a rogue, a cleric, any of these people, because everybody has those abilities. But once you dial that back and you just have a handful of people, now they become super. And so I just rolled with that idea and I said, hey, what kind of heroes would you guys want to be? And we threw around different ideas. In fact, that's why issue 0, which is free on my website, homebrewedcomics.com. You can just download it for free. In that issue, they're all different heroes. I represent that with different costumes. I don't want to break my lore in the beginning and say, oh, they had different abilities and they just decided to change. But you kind of get the idea that the first session of this game was a lot different than the rest because they didn't like the characters by the end of the game. And so we revised them like any D&D game happens. And we made them the way they continue through the campaign. So it was, oh, what's up? Nice. I love 90s stuff. So that's really like the really stripped down version. I was literally just in the gym calling my friends one day and I was like, hey, superhero D&D next month. Are you in or are you out? And I was like, I'm getting the band back together. Let's do this. And all of them showed up. It was awesome. We hadn't played as a group in 10 years and almost 10 years. And I remember after the first session, one of the guys called me and they're like, I haven't spoken to any of you since you moved away. Is it weird that I had a lot of fun? I'm like, not at all. I mean, we're adults, life happens. You have a wife and kids. Some of us had wives and kids and all that other stuff. And, nothing, there was no falling out. There was just life.
Right.
And since then, we have played consecutively once a month, twice a month sometimes, going on 6 years.
That is amazing. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you that for me, my background, I've been playing D&D since 1978 and been playing other role-playing games since about 1981. So, I definitely feel you. I hear what you can say about fantasy. Like I've fallen in and out of love with D&D over the time, and everything. But I think that's amazing. Now, I do want to get to the comic, but focusing on what you were talking about with this, why did you decide to do your own, which I think is incredible, using the D20 system instead of using something like FASE? I think that's FACE, which is out there. So, or were you even familiar with that? So,
it's because I had no idea what else was out there.
Okay,
I only knew D&D, and I knew there were like some other systems available. At the time I was actually working in game distribution. I knew of Warhammer. I knew of some of the other, Warhammer-esque systems, D&D-esque systems. But when I talked to Brad, who was the original DM for us, I said, should we try a new system? And he was like, well, we can homebrew the heck out of this thing and have a lot of fun. He's like, it'll be a headache, but everyone knows the system. Like everybody knows D&D. He said, if we try to all learn a new system at once, it'll be really hard to get everyone engaged out the gate. And that was the fear, like with any tabletop game session, is getting everyone engaged and getting them to come back week after week or month after month. And so we just decided to run with D&D because we were familiar with it. And Brad is a walking Wikipedia of D&D knowledge. So whenever there was a mistake, he was like, oh, that doesn't work that way. You have to do it this way. And it became an argument every time. You always have the rule Nazi in the group.
No, but I think that's amazing you guys did that. I think it's really cool that you homebrewed your own system, which is what it's all supposed to be about. You know, it's about having fun and everything. So obviously the next place we got to go is that you're telling, the whole point of role playing is for that small group, you guys are getting together and you're telling a story, there's a story being told. Now, I've been part of other D&D groups where I've sat there and I'm a writer by trade. I'm not an artist, but I've sat there and go, if I could get everyone to buy in, this would be great if I wanted to write a fantasy novel. But you took this and you did it. And you took these games and you've turned them into comics. So what is that process? Where's the genesis of the idea come from? Where you're like, this would be a cool comic. And then how did you go about doing all of that? Because I think that's amazing.
The comic was an accident, a happy accident. So this story is so much fun for me because the original idea was the fact is I was bored. Okay. I was just very, very bored. I had a tablet at work. My job at one point had me crawling under houses and I had to map your house from underneath all the way up. So they give you this really expensive tablet with all this expensive software. And I have no background in art. Like my favorite thing I've ever done is I broke CDs and I spray painted them and I made it look like, modern art. I sketched up some stuff as a kid. I never did get into art. I liked to draw, but I wasn't an artist, if that makes sense. And I just had this tablet. I was watching TV. I was just sitting on the couch and I just started sketching some stuff, like how I thought it would look. And I had no clue and it sucked. So I took action figures that I had and I just posed them like I thought the characters would be. And I started using that as reference to draw. Okay. And I just started sketching what I saw. And I said, hey, like this kind of looks like what I'd expect from our D&D campaign. And it was just supposed to go to the guys. Like I spent a couple months working on it, at work, at home. I don't know why, but I just became obsessed with drawing it out, mainly because we had so much fun. Like we talked about this session for a month. And for me, I don't have family here. My family is my friends, and seeing them that excited and having that much fun, like was gratifying to me that I put that together. And so I just wanted to give them something back for the time they spent, because anyone that plays D&D regularly, they've always had that conversation. This would be cool as this would be cool as that. Imagine this as a book. And so I just decided to do it, but I didn't do it for the purpose of mass like distribution. I did it for the purpose of giving it back to my friends. Right. And during the course of that, my wife at the time was, she's a phenomenal artist, and I had shown it to her when it was all done. Now this was about 2-3 months of work for me, and I was very proud of it. I handed it to her and she was watching TV. She shuffles through it. She hands it back. She's like, it's okay. Mind you, at the time, I knew my wife at the time, 11 years before we got together. We were married at that point for 4 years. So 15 years I've known this woman. And for her just to say, it's okay, I knew that in the back of her head, she was like, that sucks. So because I taught myself how to draw, I had no idea what I was doing. I just taught myself everything. So the next day I went out and I bought an iPad, and I came back and I started sketching things out. And I said, okay, I'm going to draw and you're going to critique everything I draw if you think I suck. And she's like, I never said you sucked. I'm like, yeah, you did. So for a few months, it was just every day I draw something. Every day she erase it and tell me what I did wrong. I wish I could do like a montage thing of me drawing on the couch and her walking over and just literally like redlining and erasing everything. And then I just started drawing issue 1. And every page was the same. She'd come in, she'd erase things, she'd move things around. And by the end of it, I had something I felt good about. And I couldn't color worth a crap. So I spent all this time learning how to draw, but I had no idea how to color. So one of the guys said, oh, just take it to Kickstarter. People will essentially, if you make it, they will come kind of thing, like Wayne's World. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea what I was doing with Kickstarter either, because I had no Instagram. This wasn't a mass-produced idea. I just wanted to make something cool for my friends. And I had no idea what it cost for a colorist, so I just threw like $1,500 as a goal. And we raised just like $700, I think, $500-700. And I really only needed $500 to make this thing come to life.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the research and all the stuff that I did, $1,500 was the number that stuck in my head. So we didn't get the money, and I was bummed. I was like, whatever, cool, I'll figure this out. My wife at the time decided she was going to try and color it, but she was way too busy. A friend of mine just had twins, so he couldn't help me. And one of my buddies on Facebook that I've known for a long time messaged me. He said, what is this thing that you're doing? And I told him, and he goes, well, I hadn't talked to him in a few years. I knew he was doing well for himself. He's like, oh, I got into marijuana fields real early. He's like, so I own about 4 of them. He's like, I'm sitting on a private jet. Hold on. And he just sends me the money.
Wow.
So I went back to all the backers on Kickstarter and I said, hey, independently funded through a friend of mine. So since the 30 plus people that backed a book that I literally had no promotion for, just they found me through Kickstarter or a post I made here and there, wound up giving all 30 of them a free book, shipping to Australia, shipping to Europe. I just ate the cost, said, hey, thank you for believing in the book, paid the colorist. And I thought I was done. I put something on I made like a quick website. My background is like graphic design stuff. So just threw together a quick website for my friends and family. And then we shipped 100 books. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm done. I did it, kind of thing.
Was this Crit 0 or Crit 1?
Crit 1.
Okay.
That shipped in July of 2020. And it was like right at 136 copies, I believe, shipped out on the first run. And because I had to order 200 to, for the minimums, whatever. And I thought I was done. I just thought like, hey, I did it. Cool. I can give the guys a cool book. It's professionally made. Who else did this with their D&D campaign? Right. And then I started getting messages. When's issue 2 come out? I liked this. This was fun. When's the next one? And I was like, people like this thing. People actually read our campaign. So that's when it really became a conglomerative effort. Issue 1 was mainly me just transcribing the recordings from the game, because I record every session. I always have, because I like to have a reference point of where we were. Because I do a lot of stuff. I work 2 full-time jobs. I had a family. My entire life, I've always done multiple things. So I always, if it's important, I always record it. I used to have a pocket recorder with tapes. Now I have my phone, and everything's recorded there. So I just transcribed everything. And so I went to the guys and I said, hey, people want a second issue. And they were like, oh, so you're really going to do this now? And I was like, well, yeah, I think I'm gonna. And they were like, well, then can we be part of it? Because issue 1 is okay, but like, let's reword it. So they went back, and the original issue 1 that people got has been relettered, tweaked a bit, because it was all me doing the dialogue from the recordings. They wanted to clean it up. And then every issue since, I storyboard it, I send it to them. We make some adjustments to some of the flow. And then I draw it, get it colored. And then when it goes to lettering, we sit with the recording and we go through, we clean some of it up. And we, as a team, write the rest of the story. So it's kind of like a whole way of art comes first, and then we fill it in with the story. You play D&D, you play tabletop games, you know that half the stuff that's said at a table, you can't put in a book. Of course. So we clean it up, but what's fun is we get to keep a lot of the inside jokes. Like there's stuff in there that happens at the table. We just put it on the character. Like issue 1, Caliber is playing a game on his phone, and he gets called out for being distracted. And that actually happened the first session. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? We're trying to play D&D. And he's like, oh, sorry, my base just got fragged by this idiot. I have to fix my whatever game he was playing. Yeah. And so I put it in the book because I thought it would just be funny out the gate, showing these guys don't care what's going on. So a lot of that stuff, like I said, is very organic, and it happens at the table. and people appreciate it. So now I guess I'm a comic book creator, artist, writer, all that fun stuff, just because people liked what we did.
That is amazing. I don't want to get too into the business, but so now these guys are actively collaborating with you. I mean, I gotta ask. I mean, because I'm just curious. Do you give them a cut, or are they happy to just be part of it, or how does that work for you guys? So
we really see no money from this. Okay.
Okay.
Like even on the Kickstarters, we raise like $5,000-$6,000. Even though I'm doing all the artwork, none of that really comes back into my pocket. It either goes into a bank account so I can do Comic Cons. Goes into, to the right over here, I've got a stuffed animal Samedi, which we had to order. I've got statue of Caliber, statue of Boulder. I've got a fully articulated action figure of Bones. Like, everything costs a lot of money to make.
So you're putting it on
it's
the
like
business.
We treat this like what is it? Like Spaceballs, like merchandising. It's you just got to make merch, and they get that stuff.
I think it's amazing though, because it's obviously you got a great group of friends and you guys are working on this together, and you could tell by looking at it. I will tell you right now, besides doing D&D, like I'm looking over at my other screen at your covers and everything from your homepage. I've been reading comics since the early or the late 70s as well. Dude, for being self-taught, this shit is fire. It is amazing. It is really, really good. Hell, man, if you would want to be hired to do other work, because I do my own stuff, I would hire you. So that is really incredible. So
the covers, I don't do my own covers. If you scroll down, I do have a lot of the interior work that's in there.
I've looked at those too, so they're incredible.
I love having other people do my covers. It's like a tattoo for me. I don't draw my own tattoos. I like getting someone else to do it, because every time I look at a cover, I'm like, oh, I could do better than that now. At least like I don't have to look at the interior work, because I look back at issue 1 quite a bit. I could redraw this, and everyone tells me not to, because they're big anime fans, and they're like, are you familiar with One Punch Man? And I said, I've never read it. And they're like, well, if you go to the early stuff, it's rough, but it gets better throughout the book, and you appreciate the work that he put into making it better. And so, I've gotten that quite a bit from people that have read the books. Is like, don't redo issue 1. Just like if you do anything, recolor it, because that was the first time I found a colorist, I think, on Facebook that I didn't know, just to throw some colors on there for me. Give me 1 second. My cat is going nuts to try and get out of the house, and it's
no problem. Go let that cat out. Yeah. So everybody go check
Go
out.
ahead and play this trailer for you there, Nem.
Yeah. Let's listen to the trailer. Yeah, that is incredible. In fact, I just clicked on some of your custom stuff on Homebrew Comics, and we're going to get into this campaign in just a moment. But I'm looking at it right now. My personal favorite is Spectre. That artwork is incredible. So I think that's pretty fantastic. So really, really amazing with the stats there and everything. It's really cool. From a D&D nerd, I'm digging this. So it is very, very cool. So
thank you.
No problem, man. Of course. So let's get into your campaign, and I've got some other questions after that, but I want to make sure that we hit up this campaign real quick, everybody. Pops, if you could throw that link up there. This campaign is live right now. Make sure you go check it out as we're talking through this. Make sure you go back it. You know, this guy deserves everything and all the success he's coming through. Chris has put his heart and soul into this, as have the rest of his players. I mean, you can tell. So let's make sure we back this thing. So tell me a little bit about, as we're going to go and look down the campaign, tell me what we got going on here, what kind of tiers we got and everything, so that people can go out there and back it.
Yeah, so on this one, I wanted to keep it a little simple. My last campaign, we had a ton of stuff, and I say simple, but I'll always throw in things I want. So, you know, we have to start with the basics. Digital copies are a must. I like keeping digital at a relatively low price.
How long is the comic?
What's that?
How long is the comic?
28 pages.
Okay.
So it's 28 full color pages, and you know, I do a digital deluxe at the end of the deluxe editions. Something I'm doing now is I've got an editor now. Finally, Robert Nix is editing a lot of my art. So whereas previously it was my wife at the time, now Robert has kind of taken over because I love his art style. I love what he does with his panel layouts. And so I'll sketch something out real quick and I'll send it to him and I'll say, hey, like, what do you think of this layout? And he'll red mark it. He'll send it back to me. We'll go back and forth on that quite a bit. So I want to add that stuff into the deluxe edition because me as a reader, I love seeing that stuff, like how it all comes together. And I'm going to throw in some of the, you know, character designs, things like that into the back of the deluxe editions. And then, so we've got 4 main covers. We got cover A, cover B, which cover A, you know, William did that one. It's like the action running cover. So if you know William Russell, he did that piece right there.
Cool.
And
you know, this reminds me of the old MMO Champions.
Yep.
I don't know if you ever saw that. Yep.
Mm-hmm. You did, yes. I'm a big MMO fan as well, although I'm stuck on Star Wars right now. I've been for years. I just keep replaying the campaigns. So cover A, we got him, and then Lewis, who's also doing the colors for the book, is on cover B. Cool. And I just loved the amount of destruction on this cover. He messaged me while he was working on it. He said, hey, can I like tear up their suits and everything? I said, yeah, more destruction, the better. It's D&D. People take damage.
This is your Avengers cover. That's what it looks like. So
it's got so much power to it.
Yeah.
And his colors on my line art have been, I messaged him yesterday and I was like, hey, like this combo works really well. He's signed on. He's part of the team now. And honestly, I just couldn't be happier having him on board. He's such a great asset. So that's, you know, cover A, cover B. And then I always do a catch up. So you've got digital and physical catch ups as well. So you can get, you know, we have 8 issues. You know, issue 0 is only available on print in the trade paperback because it's a short issue. So print runs on it are more expensive than I want to charge someone like to, you know, just to get it printed. So issue 0 is a free download, but it is part of the digital catch up. And then we've got a physical deluxe. Cover is, if you are a 90s fan, it's a Youngblood homage. Youngblood #1. I love team books. Youngblood was probably my favorite team book when I was a kid. Okay. And I messaged my friend Mo and I said, hey, like, you're the king of homages. Do you want to do Youngblood 1? And he was like, of course. So he sent that back to me. That one actually has been pretty popular. It's been shared on Twitter by a few people, including Rob Liefeld himself. He tweeted out that one. So I thought that was really cool.
That is cool.
That one is also another variant. So you can add that to any tier as a metal cover. So I have it being printed on aluminum because, again, I'm a fan of the 90s and I love metal. So can't have it. And it was added last minute. So I did Heroes Con this year and I did a metal cover on the last Kickstarter and I had one left over that wasn't claimed and I had it at the con. It was $30 and I didn't think, you know, random people would just walk up and buy a $30 comic book, but She walks by, she picks up all the books, and she's like, "Oh, what's that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's the aluminum cover." So she grabs that. She wants that too. I'm like, "Well, you have that same book right here." She's like, "Yeah, but it's aluminum, so I want it." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So we're done. She follows me on Instagram and everything, and we're talking. She's like, "So you're gonna be back next year?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here every year." And she goes, "Okay, you're gonna have aluminum covers next year on the next book?" And I said, "Well, I am now." So came back and I added it to the Kickstarter. So that one, like I said, that will have another variant. And then I have Matt Weldon did this next cover for me, and I love Matt. He's a great guy. He just messaged me on Twitter and said, "Hey, I had this idea," because I had shot him some stuff back and forth. And he's like, "Hey, I just put this together for you. Tell me what you think." And I loved it. I'm a huge, again, 90s kid. So Labyrinth and Dark Crystal are two of my favorite movies from that time period. You kind of like mashed it all together into this.
You even worked in your antagonist here, the Goblin King, right?
Yep.
Yep. Very cool.
He asked me if I had a design for it, and I said, "I will let you design it based on what you think," because this cover's been done for quite a while. It was when I was still working on the last book. We were talking about this, and so I was like, "I haven't had a design for him. You go ahead, give me the design, and I'll run with whatever you come up with, because I love his work." And so he came up with this, and that one, again, limited deluxe foil. I always do a foil of his covers just because they pop so well. And you've got the physical catch up as well. So if you're new to Crit, you can get all the books, and then collectors, so you can get all 4 covers.
Cool.
And then the big one. So this one comes with the action figure. It comes with the metal cover. Comes with all the mini prints, because there's that cover by Matt. There's 4 different versions of that cover colored. Him and the colorist couldn't decide on which one was the best, so they just sent them all to me, and I was like, "Cool, we have some alternatives." And then there's a Kickstarter T-shirt, which is the Young Blood cover designed as a T-shirt. I don't know if you remember when Young Blood launched, but they had all these Young Blood T-shirts running around, and I have one, so I wanted to remake that. I'm pretty selfish when it comes to this stuff. It's just whatever I like goes into as a collector. If I like it, it's going to go in there.
Very cool. Yeah, and obviously people love it, which is amazing. You kind of got to give the people what they want. Obviously, you've already learned that when they're like, "Hey, we want more metal covers." You're like, "Well, heck, if you're going to buy it, I will provide it." So,
right. I mean, it's all about what people like, and I got a lot of questions about bookmarks. So I made a Crit bookmark for this one too.
Oh, cool. Very cool. So if we could scroll back up to the top, see how we're doing right now. So on the campaign as a whole. So how much longer do we have on the campaign? I've got old eyes. 3 days to go. And you are fully funded already. Very cool. So so going forward, I didn't ask you, have you already printed these out? Or are you taking the funds to print this out? The book's already done, right? So
funds will go to printing it out. I'm waiting on the last few colors. I had to touch up some of the pages. I've got 6 pages floating around that are going through edits right now. Lettering is the easiest process. We usually do that in about a day. So once I get everything back, I'll organize it. I'm waiting on one cover to come back for the next book. I always put the next cover in the end of the book, so you know what's coming next. And that cover is being finished right now. So I'm waiting just on a few things. It's, I would say, about 85% done where we sit right now.
So you'll be ready to go when everything comes through and you get the funds and everything. So,
it will ship in September, like I said, unless the printer has an issue, which hopefully let's pray that they don't delay.
Yeah, definitely. So I got to ask, are you already working on your next issue of Crit? Are you already thinking about that?
I've been working on the next issue of Crit before I even started this issue, because that's going to be the most complicated issue I've ever had to do.
Okay.
That one is it's a flashback issue mixed with a lore issue. And, I've only said this one other time, but Crit is actually an Arthurian tale. You just don't know it until much later in the in the story.
Mhm.
And so we go into some of the King Arthur stuff in the next book. And I told everybody, I was like, I've been drawing superheroes for years and got really good at it. Now I have to draw knights and like monsters and stuff like in combat. So I've got to practice that. And I want that book to have a much different like layout. So I approach every book on kind of like a cinematography level. Like, how does this look if I were to film it? What would I want it to be? And the thing about when you deal with knights and monsters, you have these wide panning shots. So I think there's going to be a lot of like wide pages, double spreads, or utilizing both pages for the panel layout. I've been going back and forth on a few things. That one is complicated because we're not, like the session is really an info dump session with the team. We're like going back and forth on a few things. They're interrogating a guy. It's a very heavy role play session. And I said, guys, we need to make this interesting. I can't just have you talking to a guy and getting info. We have to have that information he's giving you. I want it to be like panels, like the reader gets to see what he's talking about. So we're going to show, not tell everything. And they were like, yeah, okay, so draw it. I'm like, God. So we've been, like I said, we've been working on that one since before this one, because I knew it was just going to be a tough issue to really put together and make it not feel just like a Deus Ex or just an info dump kind of book. So that one is going to be probably more produced than any other book, because we want all the information to have the gravitas that it should. And it opens up the story to a much bigger element that, King Arthur was a thing, is a thing. We don't know. It's a more villain based tale, whereas the rest of these books have been all character based. Like I drive the character narrative in every book because I want everyone to see it from like my player's perspective. This one takes a step back and gives you the villain perspective for a little bit, which is something we haven't done. And most of my books have like a title like Robo Renaissance, Caffeinated Chaos. The next issue is He Who Would Be King. So it's completely different title layout. Everything is going to be different about it because I want it to stand out.
So before I dive into more into that, if we could scroll up a little bit, make sure everybody, you go check out, you look at the links, you can see the campaign. He's doing really well, but hey, we want to bump those numbers up before the campaign ends. We don't want to make sure we go from beyond really well to incredibly well, blow my mind away well, because obviously this is a labor of love and it is beautiful and we want to support it. We want to support indie comics, period. So make sure you go check this out. Make sure you go back it. And and do that right now while this is on in the background. We'll forgive you if you're not watching this while you're going to back this. And but I want to dig a little bit more into Chris and his background and Chris the person, because we've taken care of the business. We've talked about the comic, but I like to interview the people behind the comic as well. So so I have to ask first, I'm impressed. Obviously you have a love for not only this role-playing game that you're doing, but for comics, and you want, like we were talking about the next comics, you want to bring those epic shots, and you're seeing as a cinematographer. When I'm writing a script, I do the same thing. So where did that love of comics come from? And this idea, how do you want your comics to look? You already talked about you love Youngblood from the 90s, but what's your introduction to comics?
So, as a kid, I have a very complicated childhood. I was a truck driver. He was never really around. And we went to New York to see my great aunt or great grandmother. And he brought me, at this point in my childhood, I was like, I want to say 4 or 5. It was before my stepdad came in. So I must have been 4 or 5 years old. And he comes back with this Ninja Turtles magazine. It's not a comic book. It was, big trade paperback looking thing. I still have it. It is run through the mud, destroyed, but I still have it. And I had no idea what he gave me. He just gave me a comic book.
Mhm.
And so I'm flipping through. I think he gave it to me to shut me up because this is a point in my life where I would put my underwear in my head and run around and be crazy. And he gives me the book, and I'm reading it, and I'm reading it, and I'm reading it. And I fell in love with the thing. I read that thing 1,000 times. I just kept reading it. You know, so that was the first time I ever encountered any form of comic. And then as I got older, you know, my mom, she remarried my stepdad, and my uncle on that side, he was a huge comic book nerd. I'm talking, he had long boxes all in his basement. And so whenever we'd go to visit him, I would go through his collection and read. And my dad would bring me some comics. The first comic book I ever bought with my own money was New Mutants Annual number 7. I had some birthday money, and that it's you can find it in a dollar bin. You know, it's not worth anything these days. But
I have to ask a question though. So you buy it with your own money. People are always surprised when I tell them this. Where I'm from, we had no comic book stores, so you had to fight with the other kids to get on the spinner rack in the grocery store. I'm curious where you bought your comic from. I always like to know where you bought your comic from. So.
In my town in Connecticut, there was this little hole-in-the-wall collector shop. It was mostly baseball cards and comic book cards, but he also had comic books. Not a ton, but there were some. And he had this, you know, just rack of books. And it was mostly whatever's popular at the time. And New Mutants was, you know, on the rise. It was right before X-Force had launched. And I remember walking in and I was like, hey, you know, I just got some money for my birthday. And he's like, well, just get this one. You know, the annuals are always big books, more bang for your buck. So I bought that. And honestly, I just recently, that thing is destroyed. That I've been homeless. I've moved over 100. That thing was in my car. That thing in the Ninja Turtles book went everywhere with me for most of my life, just because, I don't know, memories and that stuff. But I read that thing till it was destroyed. I got into X-Force for a while. Then, you know, Image happened. And when Image happened, I was actually traveling with my dad on the truck for the summers. So he would take me to Comic-Cons. And this is around the time when Pogs were a really big thing, by the way. So I was collecting Pogs. I was collecting.
I remember those. Yeah.
I have an original first run, the first 30 issues of Spawn, the first printings. I have all those. A lot of my collection got lost. Like I said, I've moved so many times. I had an actual original run, all first printings of the Wolverine books, which I really kicked myself in the ass for losing those. I don't know how I did that, but I got into Spawn, I got into Youngblood, and I got into Wetworks. And then I was a young kid, so I got into Gen 13 as well. And
Gen 13 is great. Gen 13 is awesome.
I just loved all that stuff. You know, we can talk about the art, the story stuff, but like as a kid, you just want to see big explosions and fun action. And that's what those books gave. And I just fell in love with them. And that continued on till I finished high school. And I think the last like real storyline I got into was the Age of Apocalypse storyline. I loved all the new designs. You know, I loved that Gambit was leading the, you know, his own team because I thought Gambit was a cool character. And then I graduated high school and my band got signed and I went on tour. And I was a starving artist, so I never really got comic books for a long time. And around 2012, 2013, when I finally got a place to live again, I wanted comic books. So I got some of my stuff from back home and I started reading the New 52 and some of the new, you know, Marvel stuff. And it just didn't hit me like it used to. I actually still go back to the Age of Apocalypse. I have the big compendium of those. I have a lot of the Spawn compendiums. You know, sadly we can't get Youngblood anymore. So I dive into like 50-cent bins for those things every time I'm at a con. But, you know, I was like kind of not into comic books anymore, like the new stuff, because it just wasn't hitting me.
Right.
And then when I started doing Crit, I had no idea what indie comics was. When I drew it, a friend of mine worked at a comic book store and he was like, oh, you should check out like indie stuff. You'll like indie books.
Yeah.
Again, no idea what it was. Got into it, found some creators, and now I'm here. That's
Yeah.
like my history with comics.
Would it be fair for me to say that your art style invokes that early Image stuff? You know?
Oh yes, I'm heavily influenced by it. That's one of the reasons why I love Lewis coloring my stuff, because his mentor, I guess, worked with Extreme Colors, and give like his style is based off of that original, you know, Image color style. And I was looking through it the other night, and I'm like, dang, like I've got the style I've wanted, you know. But yeah, I'm heavily influenced by the '90s stuff. I will say the story of Crit is written by, you know, 5 people, 6 people if you include me. So it's all got their influence as well. Every character is played by the individual who it's based off of. So you get everything from anime and sci-fi to, you know, comic books. And one of the guys doesn't get into any of it. He just plays video games.
Right.
So there's a lot of different influence for all the characters and the story. But one thing I like to say is it's like you play Dungeons and Dragons. It's an adventure with superheroes, not a superhero comic, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does make sense. I mean, it seems like you're doing quests and things like that. It just happens to be superheroes, you know, which is great. I'll also say, I think it's fascinating that for a lot of people who are into comics, how much the 90s and the 80s and the 90s influenced this generation. Most of my comics are influenced by Mike Mignola, you know, which is a completely different style than Rob Liefeld, you know. But yeah, I mean, I've got a comic book that's inspired by BPRD and Hellboy. I've got another one. These ones that are coming out are inspired by his stuff he did while he was at Marvel, or not Marvel, Todd McFarlane when he was at Marvel. You know, so I love that kind of stuff. And Spawn is another one. So, yeah, I mean, that's incredible, you know, that journey you took. And thank you for sharing that with us. Because
Greg Capullo and his Spawn run might be like some of my favorite art. I like a lot of the early Rob stuff. I'm probably, you know, you know, there's a lot of contention around a lot of it. But I always liked just the storytelling aspect that those guys used, which was just big and bold, and that's it. And I think that's the fun part. I want people to, like, when people ask me about Crit, like, what is it? You know, what if they were to read it, what would be their interests? I always say, you know, if you're a fan of like Scooby-Doo, My Hero Academia, Ninja Turtles, and Police Academy, you'll like Crit. And for the younger generation, I say the other guys, because that's a more modern, you know, buddy cop thing. But really, we talked about it, and I was like, you know, you take Police Academy and you give them superpowers, and you have Crit.
Now, you're also obviously into games. You played a Mass Effect game for a while, which is cool as hell. I would have loved a bit of fly on the wall to see how that worked out, because I think the Mass Effect universe is amazing. I gotta ask, have you and your friends ever thought about doing something else like that, or do you only have the time for this one game?
So well, Crit's done. The story is written. We played the final session, and now we moved into a sci-fi campaign. We're using Starfinder.
Okay.
And it takes place 100 years in the future after Crit, and everything's changed, because by the end of Crit, the landscape for everything is 100% changed. I won't dive too much into it, but
don't spoil it.
Right. If you've played any D&D games, it's like I wanted to end with everything having like our world being more of an adventure world. You know, it wouldn't be weird to see a hobgoblin or, you know, having spacefaring creatures, things like that. I had to get to that point. That's one thing about Crit that I personally enjoy is we don't cram everything into a very small area and overwhelm the reader. It's like very small jumps in technology and in like the sci-fi elements that come into play. It's not like tomorrow there's aliens, you know, it's like, we build into it all. And so we're in the Starfinder campaign, and it's more of a spelunking adventure. So there are big overarching narratives happening in the background, but my guys are just essentially like, you know, bounty hunters and things like that. They show up, they save the day, or sometimes they just rob the place dry and they run off. Crit was an overarching story. We played the characters to the narrative very well, and they said, "Hey, like we want to do more of a traditional like adventure of the week, or different types of adventures, especially because we're using a system none of us were familiar with."
Mm-hmm.
So it's fun. There is a lot of good story elements happening, including Cthulhu trying to eat the galaxy, but it's more for that story of the week thing instead of overarching narrative.
So this next series, is it going to still be called Crit, or is it going to be called something else?
I actually released 6 black and white pages. It's got I did it in if you're familiar with the publisher Snowy Works, him and I work very well. Me and Drew are very close. And he was like, "Hey, I'm doing a sci-fi book. Do you want to submit anything?" And I was like, "Well, I can draw 6 pages of this."
Mm-hmm.
And we went back and forth on the name. It's just called Help Wanted. So everything happens in Unity Station. So it's Unity Chronicles Help Wanted.
Oh, very cool. So you're building a universe here. This is not just the story of Crit. This is an actual role-playing universe. So
eventually, when it gets big enough, hopefully, and we've told the story that we want to tell, I want to be able to open up everything. It's going to take a lot of work, but I want to have a hub where people can go and play in our world. So I've actually partnered with Paizo on a couple of things. I was going to use D&D. We're going to translate what we built into Pathfinder, mainly because the D&D debacle last year really scared me. And I want to build an area where people can play. I have this big gap of time for a reason. I want people to be able to play in our universe and have their own stories, and maybe some of those become things that become actual lore in the universe. And I got the idea originally because we were just talking and people wanted to play our version of the game. And I was a huge Star Wars fan growing up, and a lot of those novels that are now, the extended universe or whatever they call them, a lot of those novels were ideas people just had. And George Lucas said, "Hey, you can play in my sandbox for a while." Mm-hmm. And I just want to be able to build the universe of Crit and then let other people play in it for a while.
Very cool. That's awesome. All right. So if you're up for it, one of the last things I'd like to do is I like to do a little off-the-wall questions that I have. And then at the end, I like to do a little rapid-fire type thing, the kind of thing like tea or coffee, that kind of stuff. So you down for that?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So first question I have to ask, because you brought up gaming. What is your favorite game of all time, and what are you playing right now, video game-wise?
Favorite game of all time?
Yeah. I'm putting you on the spot.
That's a tough one.
Yep.
Mass Effect's up there, but you wouldn't have Mass Effect without KOTOR, the original KOTOR.
Yeah. Which one? Mass Effect 1, 2, 3?
No, I would say KOTOR is probably my favorite game of all time.
Okay.
Because I didn't know at the time, but it does use the D&D system, and you wouldn't have a lot of the games that we have now unless KOTOR was successful. So I'll go with KOTOR. Okay,
cool. And what are you playing right now? Are you playing anything right now?
I'm actually playing the RoboCop game right now.
Cool.
Because of the book and how much time goes into making the comics, I've given myself very limited game time. Mm-hmm. And RoboCop is fun because it's like in sections, so I can just run through and do some stuff.
Here's another one I'd like to ask people. This is always interesting. What is the last movie you watched? And we're going to put a little proviso on here, in a theater, because that probably is going to take you back. Or maybe
I just took my kid to see what's the Inside Out 2. Yeah, we just saw that.
Okay.
And then we saw the Minions movie.
The new Minions movie? Cool.
Yeah, what's it? The fourth one of, I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but yeah. My kid was leaving for 3 weeks, so we went to back-to-back movies like in the same week. So I saw both of those.
Nice. I know what you're talking about. My kids are all grown up, so we don't go to see those movies as much anymore. But in fact, my grown-up kids are clamoring to go see Deadpool Wolverine. So that's where we'll be going next. So
I'm supposed to see Deadpool and Wolverine Saturday. I'm going to Connecticut tomorrow morning, and my cousin said he got tickets for Deadpool and Wolverine. So hopefully I'll see it Saturday.
very cool. What about TV shows? What are you binging right now? Are you binging anything?
I'm rewatching as of this week. I'm rewatching White Collar.
Okay, very cool.
I don't a lot of modern TV.
Yeah. Hey, what can I say? I am watching House of the Dragon right now. I like that show, but I try to get my son to watch it, and he, after the negative taste he had in his mouth from the ending of Game of Thrones, he refuses. Mm-hmm. So
I have watched Evil. We're caught up on Evil, and we're caught up on Criminal Minds. So
okay.
Those are like the two. I don't do a lot of the again. I actually had I didn't like, and I'll probably get flamed for this. I didn't like Game of Thrones after, I think it was like season 2, where like the ghost baby thing, the black cloud that she gave birth to. I kind of
yeah. The Red Witch.
Yeah, I gave up then, and I never went back. And I just lived vicariously through my friends talking about it. And then when it ended, I was like, well, I guess I don't need to watch that show, so it's fine.
Well, hey, you know what? I still watch Firefly, and I was going to say Hellblazer. Constantine, you know, one of my favorite comics of all time. I still collect Hellblazer even today. So that brings me to another thing. You're obviously a comic creator. You said you're more into indie comics now. Is there something you're collecting right now?
Like, as far as individual creators, or
or anything. Is there a comic series right now that when it comes up, maybe on a Kickstarter, or maybe it's independent or small publisher that comes out now in a store, that you're like, I got to get that new issue? So
nothing really springs to mind that I love, to be honest with you. There's I kind of float in between. Now I support, I could talk about my friends' books, but I also letter, and I'm included, I think, on 19 other Kickstarters.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm a collaborator. I think my Kickstarter count right now is like 19 last time we checked that I've collaborated on. I do a lot of design for them. So I think it would be unfair of me to say, call it all my friends' books, because I'm also part of those teams where I'll letter them and edit them. But like, if you are more than welcome to call out those books, Well, I will say, my friend Dennis, if you have not read Celestial Knight, he is finishing up issue 2 right now. Celestial Knight, after I finished that book, I called him because Dennis and I are very close. Dennis is a great artist, and there's not many books in general where I finish lettering them and I go back and I reread them to enjoy them. And it's nothing against the creators. It's just I literally have so little time in my day to do much of anything.
Right.
And Dennis had this story of one of my books that he was reading, and something hit him so hard he threw the book across the room because he was like, screw this guy. I can't believe he did that. It was so funny to him that he wound up throwing the book. And I called him, and now Dennis and I, we live about an hour and a half away. We get together every couple weeks for lunch, and we hang out quite a bit. But I called him and I said, hey, I just finished lettering your book, and I reread it. And he was like, oh, cool. He didn't get that. I said, no, I don't ever reread them. I just go back and edit whatever, I need to edit on these books. I said, your book was very well written. And I was honestly impressed, because a lot of indie books, their first issue is rough. I mean, mine was, if you read anybody's first book, it's tough, because you want to pack it with all this stuff, and you want to, because your brain has all this info dump that you want to do. And he didn't do that. And he gave a very clean story. And I was very impressed because, like I said, I've lettered quite a few books. I've read quite a few books. If I back your book on Kickstarter, I generally read it. It goes into a box, and I sift through them as I go through, because I usually end my night reading through a book. And there's a lot of great books out there. I'm not going to knock other books, but, that one in particular really hit me hard. And I had to call him. And the other book that I kind of biased on is The Convictor, if you've ever heard of that book. So Jason's a good friend of mine too, but I actually see every page before he draws it. He's like, what do you think of this? And I have to help him on that. So I'm a little, biased on those two books, but I will say they're both, you know, when you talk about passion, that there's a lot of stuff that goes in there. Caspian Porter is another book that I've read that I really like. And Bigfoot Knows Karate. I know Dan, but you know, when I first met Dan, he was just a guy on a screen that I saw using his finger to draw stuff.
Mhm.
And next thing I know, he's launching a book, and he messaged me and said, "Hey, can I shoot this by you and see what you think of it?" And I was like, I mean, this is everything I would love growing up. It's Bigfoot knows, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
big action, sci-fi stuff, and it's enjoyable. And then if you're familiar with The End of All, the Terminus series, Jeff
I
has.
do know that one, as a matter of fact. So
It's very hard sci-fi, and
Yeah.
hard sci-fi is hard to write, and Jeff does a good job with that. And I like, you know, they've talked about doing colored books, but I actually really like the fact they do like a weird gray blue scale style with that, and it matches because again, it's a sci-fi book, so you don't really need to go in. Like when I did mine grayscale, and I was like, I actually might keep this because you don't need the colors to pop. The sci-fi elements pop.
Yeah.
You know, those are again just some of the books. Now I've read a lot of the Concrete stuff because they have a lot of cool superhero books. You know, I'm talking about like Kickstarter indie books that I've backed.
Yeah.
And
So is that your favorite genre then, superhero stuff? That's your favorite kind of genre into?
No, actually, it's not anymore, and it's because superheroes. How do I put this? I feel like superheroes have become too dramatic.
Okay.
If I'm being honest, when I read these books, they try to inject too much real world into superheroes these days. And superheroes to me have always been fantasy, you know, larger than life.
Mythological.
Right. Like if we have a guy that can fly through and punch a hole in the earth, we shouldn't deal with real world problems anymore. We should be dealing with different issues.
It's why, just to share, it's why I always prefer DC over Marvel. There was a time when I was into Marvel over DC, but I've always been a bigger fan of DC Comics as a kid because DC kind of kept it, at least for a while when I was reading DC, mythological. They were larger than life. I mean, these people, they didn't deal with that kind of stuff because, like you said, Superman could move the damn planet. You know, it's like,
and that's what doesn't make sense to me is we deal with, you know, and that's one of the reasons why I got out of mainstream comics. Now, Marvel did Dark Ages. It was a short book. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed that one because it was just a contained story. This happens, they have to end it. Cool, we're done. We're not injecting real world stuff, you know, like when we start adding modern day problems to fictional areas, my brain just gets confused because again, if Superman literally could just destroy this world, why are we squabbling over little tiny things when every other day there's a villain in Gotham murdering people, there's an alien race trying to wipe out Earth, you know, like I just don't see that being as much of a thing as worried about bigger things, you know?
So I have one more random comics question before we get in the rapid fire, and then we'll wrap this thing up. You were talking about your next issue is bringing in, you know, Arthur and the whole thing. That reminded me of a series, and my brain was trying to remember it because I read it a while ago, and I used to have a copy of it, and I lost it. Did you ever read Camelot 3000? Does that have any influence? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
It actually didn't have influence. I did not read Camelot 3000 until after we were already working on Crit.
Okay.
And it's because I knew eventually I would have to draw this book. And so I went through and I read all the King Arthur books because I haven't even designed what these knights look like. And, you know, I'll just divulge some of it here. These in my universe, which we'll find out eventually, King Arthur and his knights are not from our universe. They actually crash land here because they have a ship that's supposed to get them to point A and point B faster than the speed of light. But what it does is it actually crash lands them in like 400 BC, and they cause a lot of the problems that the world deals with. So they're like interdimensional knights that get stuck here. So their armor, when they land here, is like they're spacefaring people.
Yeah.
And they have to modify that armor for being here. Like, so as it breaks off their, their helmets and things like that. So I want to make it, again, my influence on the armor is going to have to be the Mass Effect Dragon Age armor. If you're familiar with that.
I do. I know it. So,
when I was doing this and I was talking to the guys, I was like, hey, I'm probably going to draw a big influence off like Dragon Age and Mass Effect because I love those games for one. And so do we. Yeah. And, I think that would just be cool to have a sci-fi element to it. And it's also because we don't really divulge everything out the gate to the reader that's what it is. I want them to go, why does their armor look like that? And then, 5-6 books later, you find out, oh, that's why that armor looks like that. I like the big payoffs, and I like to create questions and then have them pay off later. So that's that piece. The King Arthur stuff, I've been quiet on for quite a while, but with us actually building up to it now, it's going to be really fun. I had somebody early on message me about 3 books in. They're like, hey, early on you talked about King Arthur, and we're 3 books in. I feel like you're pulling what is it? What's that zombie book where they pitched it as aliens? Walking Dead.
Yes.
Apparently, originally it was pitched as like the aliens made the zombies, and he's like, "Are you pulling that?" And I said, "No, it's just it has a payoff eventually. Like you'll get there eventually." I like to say Crit is it is slow moving in a lot of elements, but I think what we really try to do in the game and in the book is give readers bits and pieces as they go, grow the story, grow the characters, because at the end of the day, I want everyone to like the characters in the book, and the universe is second to my friends. My friends carry everything. Yeah. When you watch Caliber do something or Boulder do something, that was from them. I didn't do that. There's this book, for instance, it opens up with Boulder putting on a mask, and he's pouting and he's angry because he has to wear this new suit. And it's because in game they didn't have money to buy a new suit for him because he always messes up his suits. And they're like, we don't have any more money to buy you a skin suit. You're stuck with one of these prototypes. And he hated it, and he was so angry. And so I'm drawing this thing, and I was like, hey, in the game you had to wear it. We never dictated if you wore the mask or not. And he's like, no, Boulder would wear the mask because he's stubborn, even though he hates it. And I'm like, we could just put you in sunglasses like you normally are. He's like, no. He's like, Boulder would wear it. He's stubborn. Like, he would do it. So, like, one of the lines is, like, you don't have to wear the mask. And he's like, no, if I'm going to wear the suit, I'm going to wear it right. And he pouts the entire time about having to wear it. And, like, that's the stuff that those characters and those players come up with, not me.
And it brings the characters alive. It gives them life and depth. So that's amazing.
One of the coolest things that's ever happened was at Terrell, his wife was at work one day, and they live in Boone. We don't know anyone she works with. I've never met them. And she comes home. She's like, oh, this guy at work was talking to me and said he was reading a comic book, and there was a character that reminded him of Terrell. And she immediately said, well, what book are you reading? And he said, this book called Crit. And like, he doesn't know me. He doesn't know that we actually do this. He was just a guy at her work. And she's like, that is my husband. And I'm like, so we've written and drawn this guy so well that he sees him and says, oh, that's Terrell, without knowing that it was. So I thought that was really cool that we've done such a good job with portraying these characters like that.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. All right. So enough of random questions. Let's do some quick fire, and then we will wrap this up. So I always try and tailor this a little bit to the person that I'm interviewing. But I'll start off with the easy one. I already kind of previewed it. Are you a coffee or tea person?
Tea.
Tea. Cool. Mexican food or Italian food?
That's tough because I'm Italian. I love Italian food, but I also love Mexican food. I'm going to go Mexican because I eat more chicken and rice than anything else.
All right. Not all of you might get this, but I think he's going to get this. Ferelden or Orlais?
Orlais.
Okay. Asari or Turian?
Turian.
Superman or Thor?
I'm going to go
Say
Superman.
neither too. Okay. Deadpool or Deathstroke?
Deathstroke.
Doctor Who or who would I put with Doctor Who? Now I'm falling down here. Let's go. Let's do the easy one. Star Trek or Star Wars?
What year?
Let's go. We'll cut it off at the 90s or the mid 90s. So we'll
Star
go
Wars.
on Next Generation.
Star
Okay.
Wars.
Okay. And then let's wrap this big one up with. I'm going to ask a controversial one here. I'm going to put you on the spot. Liefeld or McFarlane?
McFarlane. Although McFarlane doesn't draw anymore, he's still, I didn't say this earlier, but when I first got into all of this, before I even finished issue 1, I listened to every interview that McFarlane's ever had. And I listened to, because he's done business-wise so much. He's a brain that no one can understand. And so I took so many notes from some of the things that he said about indie comics, about being a creator, about being an artist, all these different things. And one thing that's always stuck with me that he said was no matter how rough the day was, he always drew for an hour every single day.
Did you watch the documentary about Image Comics?
Oh, I've watched that 2 or 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing, isn't it?
It is. And there's such good energy in there for people who, if you're in a rut, watch it and just see what these guys did.
I learned a lot from watching that as well. There's a couple series I like to watch. There's another one, shout out to anybody who watches History Channel. I do. But there's a series of shows they have, like the food that changed America, different things.
Oh, yeah.
Those are great, and they give you great feedback. Like most of these guys were on the verge of being homeless before they suddenly became rich, and successful. It's a pretty incredible show. This is a great one sent in by one of the listeners. Major Force or Red Tornado?
Red Tornado.
Cool. And I have one in my head, but you know what? It went out of my head. So I think it's going to. Hey, awesome. Thank you so much. I think we're going to cut it off there. I hope this interview wasn't too painful, that it was okay me filling in for Laurie. So hope you had fun.
Oh, I had a great time. Yeah.
Awesome.
I think you're a good fill-in for Laurie.
Thank you. Awesome. So I want to thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody out here, for staying with us and watching this. I am obviously not as photogenic as Laurie, but I hope you've enjoyed this show. It's been some good content. Like I said, go back the next issue of Crit that is on Kickstarter right now for Homebrew Comics. Make sure you check out all of Laurie's Path the Pale Rider. She just finished up a campaign, but it's also on the Anyone World. Go give a look. It's in the comments here. I'm sure it'll be in the description as well, to my new campaign coming up next week for Phoenix Throne. It is a hard science fiction book that we're doing, so we're doing something different there. But we're also there's a spinoff of that called Space Monkeys, which is pure fun. It's just ridiculousness. So we're going to be doing something with that as well. So go check that out. This has been the Tuesday Morning Brew. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chris, for being my guest today. It was amazing. And I'm going to turn it back over to Pops because I think he has got some ads he's going to run. So thank you, everybody. And this has been Tuesday Morning Brew. We're out of here.
Thank you.
Flip City Magazine is just really pulling out all the stops, man. Your guys' production value of this magazine has gone insane. I mean, look at that. I mean, I remember when you guys, it was black and white. Even when it was black and white, I thought your quality was great. But damn, they just really stepping it up a notch. Look at this. James Corbett, boys. James Corbett.
Genuinely cutting, but also funny, and obviously just chaotic and very fun.
I love Flip City. It has brought new types of badassery and integrity to the print medium.
I'm watching TV. I'm looking at you. Fuck you. I'm dead again. I'm up. I can run faster than a bitch around the house.
How do you end this thing? How do you put the where's the brakes on this bus? I forgot.
Jazz hands. Jazz hands are done.